Hey everybody out there, and thank you for joining me once again, or welcome for the first time to the Overdrive Guitar channel. I'm super excited about this video today because it's going to help a lot of you make some progress faster, but before we get into it, really quick, I'm pretty excited also. I just put up a Facebook page that's designed for people who watch this channel so that we can interact, we can share performances, we can do all kinds of things. I'm just getting it rolling now. Look for the link. I'm not sure if the link will be in the description down below, but it will be on my channel. You should see a button right there on my channel art. Come over there, sign up, check us out, join the conversation, or maybe share a performance. I don't make a whole lot of posts, but this is going to be a great hub for us to be able to interact with each other. So let's get on with it. Guitar is a lifelong pursuit, so we look for any kind of time-saving tip that we can. So I put together this short list, and I will have more lists upcoming. Like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell if you don't want to miss my upcoming videos. But these I feel are the most important, so I put them in this video. I'm going to give you some tips to make sure that you progress the fastest. They're going to set you up for success. These are all very easy things, very simple to implement in your daily practice, in your daily routine, in your playing, and they will help you progress faster. Guaranteed or your money back. Tip number 1, buy an instrument that you like. What do I mean by an instrument that you like? An instrument that looks cool, because if you're watching this, you're a beginner. And you want to pick up that guitar every time you walk by it and you see how cool and sexy, or insert your adjective here. Whenever you see it, it should appeal to you so much you just can't resist picking it up. Walking in a guitar store these days is super overwhelming for experienced guitar players, never mind a beginner who has kind of no knowledge on the subject. The choices out there are overwhelming. There are tons of brands today, and the standard for quality is actually pretty high. So you walk into a store, you see all these brands, you're taking into account all these considerations of the price, what they look like, what they sound and feel like. Take into account all these other things like availability of aftermarket parts. If I don't like it, how much is it going to be worth if I want to resell it? For a beginner, forget about all those things. When a beginner asks me for tips on buying an instrument, I tell them stick to 2 things. The first one, like I said before, is to make sure you like it. Make sure you like the look of it. Make sure it looks cool, so every time you walk by it, you want to pick it up and play it. It doesn't really matter if you're into the blues and you like that super pointy Ibanez over there. If that's what you like, get it. You want to buy whatever instrument you like so that you pick it up as much as possible. And the other thing I tell beginners to stick to is to stay with a major brand. And this helps ensure a couple of things. The first one is, like I talked about before, a standard of quality. If you stick with a brand like Squier, Epiphone, Ibanez, maybe Schecter, any of these larger brands who have some guitars aimed at the beginner segment of the market, as long as you stick with a bigger brand, you're going to have a higher level of quality control and, possibly more importantly, a higher level of customer service. Although, like I said, sticking with the bigger brand is going to ensure higher quality control at this price point, you're probably going to encounter some problems. And with instruments, you're going to encounter problems kind of at any price point sometimes. So customer service is very important in the musical instrument game. Sticking with a larger brand is going to help ensure that you're not stuck holding a lemon. So now that you've got this guitar that looks cool enough that you want to play it and is made by a bigger brand so the quality is there, what's next? Tune your guitar. Tune your guitar every time you pick it up. Even if you're playing it for 2 minutes, if you're going to be playing it for 3 hours, hopefully you tune it a couple of times. Tune your guitar. We're going to talk about ear training later in this video and in a lot of my other videos. And training your ear isn't going to do much good if you're training it to hear the wrong thing. This one is so important. Tune your guitar every time you pick it up. Every time you pick up your guitar, tune it. One of the most important aspects of guitar is developing your ear. Developing your ear is crucial for a lot of reasons, and I'm not really going to get into it because a lot of those things we don't have to worry about at this point in our guitar journey. But as early as you probably are in your guitar journey, if you're watching this, your ear is being trained already. Every time you pick that guitar up, you're doing ear training, whether you're doing it consciously and actively or not. We all get overwhelmed and intimidated in the beginning of our guitar journey by the number of chords and scales and variations, and how are we ever going to memorize all of this? The good news is we don't have to memorize all of it. All we have to do is learn the major scale and how all of these chords, scales, and other things relate to the major scale. Now, this is a concept that you're probably not going to grasp right now, but just trust that as you're chugging away, going through your scale exercises, your ear is getting trained. We're overwhelmed in the beginning of our guitar journey by all of these scales we want to learn, and the cage system, and all of this, and how are we ever going to learn it? Well, in the end, after we build some of our vocabulary with these scales and chord shapes and all of these things, it's our ear that we're going to end up leaning on. So naturally, tuning the guitar is important. If we want to train our ear, we want our reference point to be correct. Our goal here is to get to that kind of guitar nirvana where we're just channeling something and the music is just flowing through us. It's coming out of our fingers. It almost seems like we're on the side watching. It's very difficult to get there. The further you get into your journey, the more and more you'll be able to get to that place. But because it's so difficult to get there, we want as few things to be in the way as possible. And training your ear is a very important step. So we don't want something simple like tuning our guitar to get in the way. You picking up what I'm putting down? If what I was talking about at the end of that tip piqued your interest, the ear training, leaning on your ear instead of scales to play, like and subscribe because I have some videos on that coming up. Tip 3, learn the notes on the neck. All of them. So learning all of the notes on the neck is one of those things that we all know is super important, but everybody puts it on the back burner. And once we start to learn them, we're kind of like, why didn't we do this sooner? Now everything is starting to make sense. Learning all of the notes on the neck is super important for so many reasons. I don't even know where to start. Like I've mentioned before, guitar is one of those overwhelming things to learn. It just seems endless. So any little tip that alleviates some of the pressure helps. And that's exactly the kind of tip that we have here. First of all, the flashback to part of my last tip to alleviate some of the pressure. We don't need to memorize every scale in every key. We simply need to memorize how to make the scales, how to build the scales from our major scale, how to build a chord out of our major scale. And we can apply it to any root note anywhere on the neck that we want. I beat it to death all the time. The sooner that you learn that the guitar is just repeating patterns laid out up and down the neck, the better. So to alleviate a little bit more of the pressure, learning the notes on the bottom 2 strings is far more important than the other strings. If this isn't something that you want to focus on totally right now in your journey, then maybe just focusing on the bottom 2 strings is a good idea. This isn't a concept you want to ignore totally. So why is it so important just to learn these 2 strings for now? Well, for 2 reasons. The first one is you're going to be learning all kinds of things like chord shapes, arpeggio shapes, scale shapes, all kinds of patterns. Some people even make up mechanisms themselves to remember things, but almost always the reference point for these things is found on the 5th or the 6th string. So that's why it makes sense to focus on these 2 strings. The second reason is that we almost always tend to use chords that have a root on the 5th or the 6th string. Tip number 4, learn a lot of songs. and have fun with it. So I touch on it a lot. The overwhelming nature of guitar, the ever expansive. It seems like we're never going to learn it all. But luckily, at the beginning of our guitar journey, or towards the beginning, where most of us who are going to be watching this are, it's a period that's kind of like a honeymoon period, because progress comes so much more often than later in our journey. All of those little aha moments that give us that great feeling, that rewarding feeling, they come often when we're a beginner. And that's because we have so much to learn that soaking in almost any information is valuable. And as a beginner, what's one of our first goals? To be able to play songs. So, what's going to make us progress and feel like we progress more than learning songs when we're a beginner? Playing songs is going to do a lot of things for you when you're a beginner. And ear training, like I talked about before, is another one of them. So you want to learn lots and lots of songs, and after a while you're going to start to hear things. You're going to start to hear these things repeat. Even if they're not in the same key, these things relative to each other will start to repeat. You'll start to pick it out. And this is how the process of playing by ear starts. There's a few kind of general goals that I'm aiming for and most people are aiming for in their guitar journey. One of them is being able to pick up songs by ear. And another one is being able to improvise and just kind of channel your muse and let it rip. Without a large vocabulary, we can't really do either of these things. And learning songs is going to go a huge way, especially when we're a beginner. If there was anything as close to a shortcut in your guitar journey as I could give somebody, this would probably be it. Just learn a bunch of songs in addition to your regular kind of guitar curriculum when you're a beginner. So the last tip in this video I mentioned in my last tip where I talked about learning a lot of songs, and that's listening to music. Listening to music is so important. Anybody who is learning an instrument or who plays an instrument should be actively listening to music. So what's the difference between listening to music and actively listening to music? Well, actively listening to music means you're trying to kind of break it down. Now, for a beginner, that usually means simple things like chord progression, or even more simply and importantly in the beginning, damn dump truck. Or even more simply and more importantly in the beginning, rhythm. Something as simple as hearing a song on the radio and counting the rhythm, tapping your foot to the rhythm is super important. This is going to be a tip in the later video to incorporate that rhythm into body movement while you're playing, but that's for a later video. But the most important aspect of guitar, whether you're going to be a lead player or a rhythm player, is rhythm. I would say the rhythm matters more than the note choice. But I digress. Trying to deconstruct music is another step, like I said, to learning to play by ear, which is one of our main goals. Even if playing by ear isn't a goal, learning to deconstruct these songs will go a long way to being able to improvise. Because to be able to improvise well, we actually want to be able to hear things in our head before we play them. More on that in a later video that's going to be incorporated into one of my tips in my next tip video. Like and subscribe if you don't want to miss it. So if you're still watching this at this point, enter the word gopher in the comments, just so I know if you're still watching. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, if this was valuable to you, please like and subscribe so that I can continue my content journey. Thanks guys, and keep rocking.